can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost in the moment. All I want is for you to come back. Now I'm caught in the middle of life, and I need.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the most powerful platform for truth on God's green earth. This is the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, your brother, and your friend, Rashid. And as we wait for my sometime co-host to come on from time to time, Carl Zha is my co-host from time to time as he comes on. He's a frequent on the show. We're going to chop it up, but I want to just take the time out right now from the depth of my soul to the bottom of my heart to thank Paul Spencer 4702 for becoming a channel member. Claps, claps, claps. Thank you so much. I also want to thank each and every one of you for giving me another hour of your day and another day of your time, because you did not have to do that. And as I always explain to people, that time is an unrenewable resource. It's the most valuable commodity out there. Not oil, not gas, not gold, not silver, not food. Time is the most valuable resource or commodity out there, and it's not renewable. And once you use your time or spend your time, that's why they call it spending, you never get it back. So I'm hoping that my show, my platform, will enlighten you in some way, or light a fire up under you some way, where in return you get something back that is equal in value or greater to the time that you've spent with me and the audience on the platform. So again, we open up in the name of God always. So I want to talk to you guys. Carl should be joining us. I was looking at the little thing. He sometimes, he's in Bali time, so sometimes you got to give him a little time or whatever. And I know he's been busy today, just like I have been. So we'll make time for that. Okay. But as we make time, I want to talk to you guys. Shout out to everybody who's joining us from around the world, from all of the platforms. I really, really appreciate you joining us. Shout out to Brooke Chin in the building. Yeah. Shout out to Phobos. Phobos is in the building. Phobos 1 is in the building. Shout out to Not Works in the building. Carlos, I'm messing your name. I'm so sorry. Carlos Sorry 2877. Shout out. Thank you so much for joining the platform. Now, let me wait for Carl. As a matter of fact, as we talk, let me hit him up real quick, okay? Y'all give me a second. And he'll be joining us. Give me 1 second. We are live. We are live. All right, I hit him up. So now, as we wait for him, keep it coming. I appreciate that. Shout out to Jay. This thing is moving so fast. Hold on. Shout out to JWCLAU1. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Shout out to M Sparks 187 in the building. Everybody. So now let's get to something. Let's talk about a few things, because what we're looking at again is a world imploding, okay? And as I talk to more and more people, I believe those in power are in a realization now that you can't put this genie back into the bottle. The sanctions genie is out of the bottle. They're trying to bring it back, but they can't, because they're caught between trying to show that they still matter and they still have power and pull, and they're also caught in between that other part of that rock, which says, listen, the more people we alienate, the less time we have, the less help we have, the less sympathy we get, the less empathy is shown to us, economically, politically, and geopolitically. So we're looking at, when we're looking at this whole situation, we have to look at it like that. We're looking at desperate players, desperate actions, desperate policies. So when you look at a policy from the West and you say this is totally detrimental to the to the well-being of the people of this nation or that nation or the Western world. And then you're looking at, and they continue to repeat these policies. That's what excited, deranged, insane, and desperate people do. Have you ever noticed that when a person is smitten with and becomes frantic, one of the main things that is done to that person, you have to smack them to calm them down. They have to be hit to be calmed down because they're not thinking rational. All they think about is what just transpired, or what, and their body is like all out of control. So sometimes you have to smack them to get them back to some kind of level of reasoning or calm. Well, the world is smacking the U.S. and the world is smacking the Western world nations and getting them back into calm. Carl is in the booth, baby. Carl is in the booth, and I'm going to bring my friend. This is my friend, Carl Zha, in the building. I cannot wait to chop it up with you, my friend. How it's going, Carl? Your microphone? Yeah, let me see. Okay, here we are.
Hear me now?
Yes.
I think I moved my mic a little bit. So, yeah, sorry, I was running a little bit late dropping off my kids at school, but I'm glad to join you.
I was telling everybody, I said, you got to understand he's on a different time. He's around the world, so you got to give him a little time to get here. He's always here. Carl, talk about your journey, man, because a lot of people don't realize that you were on a sabbatical doing certain things behind closed doors. So tell the people what you were doing and what you saw and what made you see and realize even more that we're living in the decline of the West and the rise of the East.
So I was actually took a trip with Pepe Escobar to visit Xinjiang, China, the place that there has been so much Western propaganda about selling the fake Uyghur genocide narrative. So I decided to see it for myself. That was my first trip to Xinjiang. I always wanted to go. I remember when I was about 7 years old, my dad bought me a calendar. It's a picture of an Uyghur girl in her traditional dress, and in her background is snow-capped Tianshan mountains and the meadow. I mean, everything just looks so beautiful. And ever since then, I wanted to visit. And this time, I made my dream come true. And this is a trip that Pepe also wanted to do for 20 years because he has been to Xinjiang since 1997 and 1998. And he wanted to see the change that took place. I think the last time he was in Xinjiang was 2007 or 2006. So we had a blast. We drove 3,500 kilometers all throughout southern. Xinjiang is a huge place. Xinjiang is about the size of Alaska. So I developed an iron butt, being able to sit in the car for like 10 hours at a time, but it's great. It was worth it. The people was very friendly. I mean, like the whole Western narrative just falls apart once you are there because you are there with all these Uyghur people going about their daily business all around you. All that's bogus genocide narrative just falls apart, especially comparing what's actually happening in Gaza right now. And so we had our chance to partake, the local culture, the local food. The food was excellent. If you're a meat lover, you'll be in heaven. They have lamb kebab. They have, there was one special dish I was surprised to find in Kashgar. It was roasted pigeon. It was very good. It was very good. Pepe would not touch it, but I loved it. There's and they have all kind of fruits because Xinjiang has a lot of sunlight. So the fruits have extra fructose content. It's very sweet. And we also saw amazing infrastructure. The whole way we're driving through Xinjiang, we saw China was basically paving the desert with solar panels. We saw miles and miles of solar farms and wind farms. And as a result, the electricity in Xinjiang is very cheap. Prior to heading over Xinjiang, I met with an American entrepreneur based in Shanghai. So they used to be involved in crypto, and before Chinese government banned crypto mining, they were in the process of setting up an operation in Xinjiang because electricity in Xinjiang is cheap. So that they thought they were going to set up their crypto mining operation over there. But this is another reason a lot of the photoics, essential ingredient for making solar panels, the polysilicons, are also made in Xinjiang, because the process of making polysilicon is very energy intensive, and because Xinjiang electricity is cheap, so they make everything over there, and then they just make more solar panels and cover the place with it. And there's a lot of tourist infrastructure that was being built. A lot of the hotel we stayed in, super nice. I posted some footages of my hotel room in Hotan, Xinjiang, and places like that would cost easily $450 in US or Europe. But in China, it's still very affordable. That's one of the secrets that people don't know about. China, even though it has a very developed infrastructure, even surpassing the developed West, but it offers at a very affordable price. You can get very, very nice hotels in China from $40 to $80 a night. And a lot of the hotels we stayed at Xinjiang were built within the span of last year. So everything is very new. But even in in my opinion. Oh, sorry. You mean Turpan, basically a rural place in southern Xinjiang. They had a very nice hotels, and in the hotels they have the robots delivering stuff to your room. Like, I called the front desk, I said I want some water, and then a few minutes later the doorbell ring. I opened up and there's a robot with some water. I just press a button and then take my water. It was so cool. Something you just don't see every day. And they have the AI's thing in the room. You can tell it to open the blinds, just turn off the TV, but everything is in Chinese. Like, they don't have English language capability, because a lot of the tourists today in China are domestic tourism, Chinese domestic tourism. When we went to Xinjiang, actually, our tour guide told us there was a sharp drop off of foreign tourists coming to Xinjiang after 2009, 2008, 2009, and that and because of the intense Western propaganda on China, on Xinjiang, people still today on Twitter, there was still people just tweeting stuff without evidence, saying, "Oh, it's difficult to get to Xinjiang. You need a special permit." I'm like, "No, you don't. I just have a Chinese visa. I just went last month. I had no problem." And so there was a sharp drop of foreign tourists to Xinjiang after 2009. And as a result, a lot of the English-speaking tour guide, they had to switch careers, to trading companies or whatever that would make better use of their English language skills, because not enough foreign tourists are coming. So today, when we went last month, it's almost all Chinese tourists. But the Chinese tourists, local tourists, were everywhere in every small town of Xinjiang, and there were tourist infrastructure that was set up to accommodate these tours. By my kind of rough eyeball estimate, tourism industry is probably one of the largest employer of the local Uyghur people right now, and that's intentional, because Chinese government is intending to funnel some of the wealth from the eastern, more developed part of China to Western China in places like Xinjiang by means of tourism. And so one thing I find out is that for a lot of the state-owned enterprise employees or government workers, they are, they're entitled to take like one paid vacation paid by their work unit. But the government heavily encouraged them to take that vacation in Xinjiang. So there's a lot of people coming to Xinjiang, bringing a lot of tourist dollars. And I met, so many Uyghur people employed in the hospitality industry, whether as food vendors or hotel staffs. Everyone is so friendly. All I had to do was just learn a couple of phrases. Before I heading to Xinjiang, I learned how to say hello in Uyghur. Jak Shibu says, and as soon as I said that, first people look at me, very weird, and then a smile started breaking over their face, and then they want to know more about me, and then we start a conversation. And that's what you got to. That's all you need to do when you travel to any place. Just learn a couple phrases in local language. People will open up. And okay, maybe different in United States, because in US people demand you know English, and even if you speak an accent, people will make fun of you. But in other places, other than the monolingual Anglosphere, if you make an effort to learn local language, it's greatly appreciated, because people see that you're making an effort to learn about their culture. So it's great, and people are super friendly, and because there's a dearth of foreign tourists coming to Xinjiang, so Pepe became like a rock star, right? Everybody wanted to take pictures with him, and which is great, because he also opened a lot of doors for conversation. We're traveling in Turpan, in this touristy part of the area. It was like in the middle of the day, so it's really hot. There are not many tourists. Two little girls, they're hanging around because their parents are open a shop over there. So they're just wandering around to meet us, and they pointed to Pepe and told me like they want to practice English. I'm like, okay, sure. And so we have a conversation. Their English is okay. They still need a little translation. So I act as a translator for Pepe. I would translate from Chinese to English. And that's another thing I noticed. Like among the local people in Xinjiang, there's about an age gap. So for people who are 40 and above, a lot of people don't really speak Mandarin Chinese. But for people who are 40 and under, you will have no problem communicate, because the bilingual education started around early 2000. So for the people who are like 30 something or 20 something, they will have no problem speaking the Mandarin language. But of course, they also still retain their own language. There's the whole thing about so-called cultural genocide. That's total bullshit, because on every street sign in Xinjiang, every shop sign, they have two languages. They have the Chinese characters, and they will have the Uyghur script written in the Arab Persian script, and that's mandated by law, because Xinjiang is a Uyghur autonomous region. So if you travel to the capital or any other big city, you will see bilingual signs everywhere. And we like, me and Pepe needed a trim of his beard when we're in Bhutan. So at like 9 o'clock at night, we saw a barber shop still opening across the street from our hotel. We walk in, it's two young Uyghur guys, so we start a conversation while they're working on Pepe's beard. And I asked them what they like to do. And of course they said they like to go to play pool and chase girls, like like same thing like any 20-year-old young man like to do. And the funny thing, there was a 10-year-old kid who was playing on his cell phone in the shop. So the two Uyghur barbers, they're like maybe in their late 20s. They still have a little bit accent when they speak Mandarin Chinese, and there's some part when there's still need a little bit help with translation. The 10-year-old kid, he was like blah 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 blah, because he was fluent in Mandarin and Uyghur, and so he was our little translator, and he seems to know everything. And so we asked him how much the money they make, how much investment they need to get the barber shop going, and if they own the shop. And the little kids like, no, they don't own the shop, they just work here. So the kid's parents run a shop next door, so he just come and hang out. Like a lot of 10-year-old kid, he's playing games on his phone. And so like people are just living their daily lives. That's the sense I feel. I went to on China's National Day, it was October 1st. I walk around Kashgar. I was just holding up my DJI Pocket 3, just walking around the block. And I was just filming everything without making any commentary. So I plan to eventually put that footage on my YouTube channel, just say, walking in Kashgar with no commentary. I mean, that should just enough to dispel a lot of narrative. Just like when they're talking, what genocide? You see all these Uyghur people all around you. Even the local cops are Uyghur. Like a lot of Western reporting, they will talk about Uyghur being oppressed and the oppressive Chinese police presence, and they kind of try to create a dichotomy between Chinese and Uyghur. What they didn't tell you is actually the cops are also locals. The cops are also Uyghurs, and there are a lot of security checks. It's true. Like every hotel we went, there's a metal detector. But pretty soon we find out nobody really cares because we will just walk straight through the metal detector door and it would set off the alarm and nobody even look at us. So we just walk by. And on the road, because we drove a lot, we drove across the Taklamakan Desert, the world's second largest moving sand dune desert after Sahara. China built multiple highways right through the middle of the desert. And they were able to do that because they built this so-called magic Chinese cube, basically grids of straw on both sides of the road to fix the sand in place so the sand dune don't cover the road. And it works because we had no problem. We're flying on the highway in the desert. We got off at a couple of rest points. And it was like you are suddenly in the middle of the desert, and the sand is blowing. The wind is blowing sand right into your face, and Pepe is like, "Oh man, this has been my dream for 20 years to travel in the depth of the Taklamakan Desert, following the footsteps of the 19th and 20th century explorers." And so we were. So as we were driving through, there were a lot of police checkpoints, especially closer we got to near to the border, but a lot of the checkpoints they just tell you to roll down your window, look into the camera because everything is AI recognition now. So it's just looking at the camera, and then they tell you to buckle your safety belt. So one thing we always have to do when we saw a checkpoint coming out, it's like okay, time to buckle the safety belt. Police checkpoint. So because they will tell you, look at you, make sure you are having safety belt on, and they will remind you to put on safety belt, and then they wave you on your way. There was only one or two instances we did get pulled over because I'm traveling with Pepe. We have a Russian photographer who is very blonde, and we have a white South African traveling with us. So they did have us pull over to check our passport. There were only two instances, but both instances, the local Uyghur cops were very super polite, very professional. They were apologizing profusely, say, "Oh, wow, I'm so sorry we have to do this." So like have a great trip. And everywhere we went, people were inviting us to go have meal in their houses. Like one time, we're traveling on the stretch of road before we head into the desert. I just had to pee, so we stopped by the side of the road. There was a lot of cotton fields, so I went to take care of my business, and then I saw a woman picking cotton. So I went to ask her, right, because I was surprised. I thought most of the cotton picking has been mechanized in Xinjiang, right? And there's also that, the whole those Western propagandists always trying to associate cotton picking with Uyghur slavery because they fully understand there was a history of slavery and cotton in the United States. That's what people get associated with. So I went to ask the woman cotton picker because she was working alone. Like, why is she picking the cotton? Wasn't it mechanized? It turns out the big machines, when they turn around the corners, for some reason they can't pick. So what she's doing is picking the cottons around the corner. So then they would have the machine to harvest the rest. And it turns out she's actually not from Xinjiang. She's not an original local Uyghur. She's from a neighboring Gansu province. So I asked her how she ended up in Xinjiang. She said, "Oh, I've been in Xinjiang for 20 years." I asked her which place you like better, your hometown in Gansu or Xinjiang. She said, "Of course, I love my hometown, but there's no money there, so I come to Xinjiang to make money." That's what people don't realize. A lot of those migrant farmers who do work in the cotton field in Xinjiang, they're actually not locals. They're from neighboring provinces, which are less economically developed than Xinjiang. A lot of people from neighboring province of Gansu, for example, they come to do the cotton picking. And so I asked her, where are your children? She said, "Oh, my kids are right now in college. They're attending college in Xinjiang." So she is picking cotton to support her children to go get a university education. And then there was a couple of Uyghur cotton farmers came over, and we talked to them. They own about 100 mu of cotton field, which is about 6 to 7 hectares. And so I asked them how much they had to pay fertilizers, how much they're making from the cotton given the market price, and they give us a number. And I was like, wow, these guys make good money. These guys make good money. And they invited us to have lunch with us. But I really wanted to take them on their offer, but we were like really on a rush schedule because Pepe came to China on a 30 days visa-free thing because he has European passports. A lot of the EU countries now get 30 days travel-free to China. But he started early. He started in Xi'an and then traveled the whole Silk Road corridor to Dunhuang. And then he took a high-speed train to meet us in the capital of Xinjiang, Urumqi. So by the time he arrived in Xinjiang, we only have 2 weeks left. And there's all these spots he want to hit. So we're literally like, our schedule is like we leave the hotel at 9:30 in the morning and we arrive in a different city, another hotel at like 10 o'clock at night. And so that was our host. So we didn't have time to stop for that lunch. I really wanted to go. I mean, next time. So this time we did the southern Xinjiang. Xinjiang is a huge place that's get cut in half by the massive Tianshan Mountains. And the southern Xinjiang is a traditional home of the Uyghur people. And Pepe want to do another trip next year, next spring. Northern Xinjiang, the land of the nomads, the Kazakhs. So he want to go to the Xinjiang Kazakhstan border to see the actual modern iron Silk Road, where the railroad links when they transfer the goods and stuff through the custom. So that's planned for next spring. And yeah, I mean, you cannot possibly see all of Xinjiang in one trip unless you have unlimited time, because Xinjiang is a massive place, let me tell you. And it's there's a lot of driving. You gotta develop a butt of iron. Unfortunately, China is super convenient in terms of everything. So we got ourselves those neck pillows and those back support pillows. And so we made through it, but it was really amazing trip. I highly encourage everybody to go. And like I said, there's really no restriction on traveling to Xinjiang. As long as you have a valid Chinese visa, you can go. And the only place that we need to apply special permit for is when we get close to the border region. So we wanted to travel to Tashkurgan, which borders Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Tajikistan, and then we have to go to apply for a border permit, which just take a couple hours. And then we're on our way. It was amazing experience. What Pepe Pai didn't realize, what I should have told him is his 30 days Chinese visa actually will get reset if he just cross the border into a certain country and come back. And he get another 30 days. But we didn't have time for this trip. We might do that for next trip. We might just step inside Kazakhstan for like few hours and come back, and the visa get reset. So I highly encourage everybody to go check out Xinjiang, man. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. So people are super, super friendly. Like it's even the people who don't have much. We were visiting, and they're super friendly. It's like we're in Khotan. We visited a silk textile factory, and then afterwards, the next door we saw like a courtyard with the door half open, and we saw the owner. We asked the owner if we can visit her courtyard. She's like, sure. We just went and look around, and they have these grapevine growing on top of the courtyard to provide shade. And this is just a typical rural household. She didn't have much. It was lead very simple life, but she will pick the grapes from the vine to treat us. A bunch of stranger who just kind of budge in and ask her if we can see her courtyard. People are super, super friendly. The food is fantastic. I highly, highly recommend it.
Well, Carl, why do you think the United States continues to use that Uyghur excuse to sanction China or to bring China down? And it's starting to shoot them in the foot, because that sanctioning that region is sanctioning the cotton area, and they need cotton to produce the bullets in the arms for their wars of aggression. So it's like they're shooting themselves in the foot, and they're thinking that they're shooting China, but in reality, without the cotton fiber, they can't rearm themselves.
There are a couple of reasons. I mean, like originally, the whole Xinjiang sanction, which is an excuse for them to levy sanction against China on so-called human rights ground. The first they didn't target cotton. They targeted the solar panel industry because, like I said, a lot of the solar panel components were produced in Xinjiang, and the United States at that time wasn't happy that China has come to completely dominate the solar industry. So their way of idea of competition is a Tony Hardin way of competition, which is taking a baseball bat and to kneecap their competitors. So that's what they try to do. But there's really no competition. Even today, China continue to dominate the solar industry. In fact, without China, U.S. would not have like access to cheap solar panels. Recently, what they did is just they're doing like outright theft now. Like a Chinese solar company opened a factory, fully automated factory in the United States to produce solar panel, produce batteries, and the U.S. Congress then passed a law to made it impossible for them to continue to operate. They basically forced them to sell to American ownership. I mean, so that's how U.S. acquired a solar manufacturing plant, by literally taking it away from their Chinese owners. That's the only way they could compete nowadays. And the cotton, you're perfectly correct. Xinjiang produced some of the best quality cotton, and most of the cotton production in China that was previously exported all over the world. The result of the Xinjiang sanction is that U.S. Pentagon, the military-industrial complex, cannot source enough cotton for making ammunition, which they needed to supply to Ukraine. This is just something that wasn't foreseen, because they started this Xinjiang sanction way before the special military operation began in Ukraine. So this is just all those things that boomerang that come to bite the empire in the ass. There's many such cases. But China continued to plow ahead. Like I said, they don't need foreign tourists to come to Xinjiang. There are plenty of domestic tourism going around. I was in the Kashgar Old Town, and the popular thing for tourists to do is like dress themselves in the ancient Uyghur princess dress and hire a photographer to follow them around taking pictures, right? Originally, I thought this is just a tourist thing to do for like tourists from other parts of China. Then I start seeing a lot of Uyghur people also doing the same thing. I'm like, what's going on here? So I went to ask them. It turns out they're also tourists. They're not Kashgar local, but they're Uyghur people from other cities like Aksu or Kucha, and they're also on vacation traveling to Xinjiang. So the tourism is for everybody, and just everybody have a great time, and that put a lot of cash into the hands of the locals. We also interviewed one of the people who still live in the Kashgar Old City, one of the families, and they told us at the front the front street with most pedestrian traffic, those shops rent for like 300,000 RMB for 6 months. So the owner of those Uyghur owner of those houses, they could make good money. They make good money from the tourism, and like the government also when they first so the Chinese government put a big effort to develop the place for tourism. So what they did is they so for people who don't know, that there was a famous movie, The Kite Runner, that was about Afghanistan. Was actually filmed in Kashgar, Xinjiang, because they couldn't film it in Afghanistan; it was too dangerous. So they decided to use Kashgar as a stand-in for Kabul in the 1970s. As this movie came out around 2007. The Kashgar renovation project started after that, around 2008, 2009. So in 2007, Kashgar, this old city Kashgar, still looked like what Afghanistan would have looked like back in the 1970s, mud huts and everything. And so the government came in a couple of years later. They gave money to the locals, either to buy them out, so they moved to a new apartment built elsewhere, or for the people who decide to stay, the government gave them money so they can renovate their houses, make it prettified for tourism. And now the Kashgar Old City is a big tourist place. It's in China it's like rate like what is it, a 5A tourist destination, which means like the top tourist destination. We were there during China's National Day. There were a lot of people, lots of energy. People are just generally having a good time. I cannot just, seeing is believing. I can hear and talk for hours. People will say, "Oh, Carl Zha is just a Chinese propagandist," But go see for yourself. Like if you don't believe me, go see for yourself. And it also helps with some local language skills. That you can communicate with local people. Because I see what a lot of these propagandist video do is they will go to Xinjiang, take some videos, and then mistranslate intentionally what the locals actually said, either in Uyghurs or Chinese, and then they're posted to the Western audience as like the as a part of the continuous propaganda bombardment. I mean, a lot of people still believe that because they just don't know any better. Seeing is believing. Just gotta go there, see for yourself.
And you were talking about you and Pepe at that border area that meets these different nations, and a lot of people don't know that the United States was trying to get a base there, a military base there, and this is one of the reasons that Trump demanded a return to the base in Afghanistan, because it is close to some of China's nuclear reactors or what nuclear technology. Could you expand on that? And because they don't talk about that in the news.
Yeah, I mean, like Afghanistan, the U.S. sees Afghanistan as like the dagger aimed at the soft underbelly of Russia and China. Prior with Soviet Union, right, and later. So U.S. is heavily involved in Central Asia after the Soviet collapse. U.S. had Afghanistan everybody knew about, but U.S. also had military bases in neighboring Tajikistan, in Uzbekistan, in Kyrgyzstan, and they only got kicked out of Uzbekistan because U.S. tried to sponsor a color revolution and it failed, so U.S. got kicked out of there, and the Tajikistan stopped renewing the U.S. lease. Kyrgyzstan did the same. So and also because those places start losing their value once U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan. But the whole reason U.S. went into Afghanistan in the first place, besides the grift, which Assange already talking about, they weren't in Afghanistan to win the war. They were in Afghanistan to wash vast sum of money from taxpayer bases of North America and Europe into the hands of a small transnational security. But other than that, some justification these strategic chicken hawks in Washington was saying is, oh, we got to be in Afghanistan because then we're being in a position to threaten Russia and China next door. And so, but now that their influence, U.S. influence has been receding since the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan. But this is why Trump recently went to meet Central Asian leaders, and it was reported in Western media as countering Russia and China influence. So I posted a map on Twitter. I'm like, okay, look, I know Americans not very good at geography, but just look at this map here. This is Central Asia. It's surrounded by Russia, China, and Iran. How the heck is the United States gonna go there and counter Russian and Chinese influence? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's it's just ridiculous. And but for China, for Xinjiang, for China is also very important because it's one of the important hub for the Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative stands for Silk Road Economic Belt and the Maritime Silk Road. And the belt part, which is a land route, go through Xinjiang. Like all the rail links go from Xinjiang to Kazakhstan, to Russia, to Belarus, eventually to Poland, to Europe, to EU, or you can travel from Kazakhstan through Uzbekistan, eventually to Iran, to Turkey, and to West Asia. So Xinjiang is a very central piece. This is why U.S. also has an interest to see Xinjiang destabilized, because that would threaten the whole Belt and Road Initiative, all the Eurasian land corridors. And another thing is that the Western imperial meddling in Xinjiang is nothing new, because when we travel through a lot of old ancient ruins, a lot of old Buddhist ruins in Xinjiang, and everywhere we went, we saw the destruction and looting by the Western imperialist, quote unquote, explorer, but really like these guys are like the original OG Laura Croft, right? They went there to steal and to loot cultural treasures, and they're Laura Croft without the boots. These guys, R.L. Stein or Stephen Hayden, all these people. A lot of this. We saw murals. Entire walls has been peeled off and being carried to museums in Berlin, in Britain, in Japan, in North America, and these all they left were just scarred remains, and all these quote unquote Western explorer who and a lot of common excuse was saying, oh, if it wasn't for us, those cultural treasure will doubtless be destroyed by the Chinese themselves in Cultural Revolution, blah, blah, blah. Well, let me tell you, a lot of those priceless 1,000-year-old mural from the Bezklik, from Kizil Caves in Kucha in Xinjiang, they were transported to Berlin Museum and was destroyed during the Allied bombing in World War II. So all that thing about they protected from destruction is bullshit. And also another thing is, even all these cultural treasures that were displayed in places like the British Museum, a lot of the people who visit them, they have no cultural connections to these artifacts. They don't have the same appreciation for these priceless cultural legacies. Because I remember visiting the Chicago Field Museum, and I remember seeing these 3,000-year-old giant bronze drums from the Song Dynasty, ritual bronze from Song Dynasty. It was just like sitting there. Nobody cared, right? Because even a lot of American visitors, they don't understand the significance. They do not have a cultural connection, right? See, these bronze objects were just sitting there gathering dust, and me as a Chinese person, I see that, I was kind of angry. I was kind of like, why is it here, not in China? When many Chinese people, Chinese school children, could have a chance to learn about their own history. Yeah. So anyway, this is what. But today's China is not the China of the 19th century or early 20th century. So those kind of cultural lootings now will be impossible. And China, through its Victory Day parade in September, we saw China had put their might on display and put on United States and its vassals on notice. China will no longer be contained. You will no longer be humiliated. Now China is a force to be reckoned with.
It's amazing you brought that up. I wanted to touch on what you just said, but before that, this is what colonizers do. They take these trophies and then they display them without having a connection to the spirituality or the culture of that people, and they keep it. And when you see a lot of African nations, you see a lot of Latin American nations are say, hey, return this stuff that you took from us. And now we're seeing a lot of Asian nations doing the same thing. Say, return this. If you are truly sorry for what you've done in the past, return, because this means more to us. It connects to us more. We don't want the talking. We want you to do this. But you brought up something about containment, which is something. I was reading something, Carl. This is what made me contact you the other day. This is why I hit you up. I was reading something, and they were talking about the United States and its allies now realize that the first and the second island chains are no longer a barrier for the Chinese Navy, and they cannot contain the Chinese Navy or keep them hemmed into the first and the second island chains. And they're saying that now they must now resort to either trying to hold the Malacca Strait area hostage or destabilize the area that we were just talking about that borders all of these Central Asian nations. I'm pretty sure that the policymakers in China are very aware of these things. And what do you think that they have to say about or think about these things?
Well, I mean, China has been building itself up. It's for the last few decades. China has been concentrating on building its own capability. So now China is an impregnable fortress. I mean, the history has shown that any kind of war, either on China, on the periphery of China, will be catastrophic for the American empire, whether it was Korean War or Vietnam War. I mean, China would not tolerate being contained, and China today can no longer be contained. And China is also very much aware of the U.S. attempt to threaten China's trade route, energy supplies through the Straits of Malacca. This is the whole reason for the Belt and Road Initiative. China is trying to build multiple links, multiple nodes of linkages with the rest of the world. So the U.S. Navy cannot be at all places at all times. There will not be a single point of failure in China's links with the rest of the world. There'll be multiple links. Now the global warming is opening up the Arctic. Now there's an Arctic route that China can take to go hug the coast of Russia to go reach Europe will actually be faster than traveling the traditional route down South China Sea, up the Indian Ocean, through the Red Sea, then to Mediterranean, all that. So this is why now U.S. is really concerned about Chinese influence in the Arctic. This is why Trump wanted to grab Greenland, right, to deny it to the Chinese and the Russians. It's just ridiculous. But this is why Trump is also threatening to put additional tariff on any goods coming out of the Chancay port, mega port that China helped build in Peru, which is only just going to serve to divert the trade away from the United States. If you're going to put tariff, those goods are not coming to the U.S. anymore. They're going to go straight across the Pacific to China. It's going to further bind the rest of the world to China. U.S. What they're trying to do by reviving the Cold War, they thought they can build a wall around China. What actually happening is United States is building a wall around itself and its allies, its vassal states, while the rest of the world, which is a global majority, by the way, has moved on. The global South have no problem with China. They welcome trade and investment from China, and now they're getting. China has so much to offer, from making the AI open source to help building physical infrastructure. The China and the global South are moving forward into the 21st century, while the U.S. and its vassals are trying to fight a rear guard action to guard their own privileges from the 20th century. And I think that's where they're going to be stuck. They're going to be stuck technologically, economically, in the 20th century. This is why there's so many problems right now. Whether in United States or so-called collective West, is because everything has been so ossified, so fossilized, and literally fossilized, because Trump has gone 100% with the fossil fuels. He doesn't believe in the renewable energy. So now we have China and the rest of the world plowing full steam ahead, and leaving the U.S. and the garden of Europe in the past.
And I was looking at some of the tech cities that are all across Africa. It shocked me that these smart cities, China helped, and they helped transfer technology. And a lot of these areas, they are absolutely amazing. And it's a reflection of the trade and the trust between what's going on in China and these African nations, and how these fast, high-speed rail, everything. And China is not just their building. A lot of people don't know this. They're also transferring technology and helping to set up academies and schools and stuff. And this is why the United States starts really pushing on this thing about China exploiting Africa, when in reality, that is the pot calling the kettle black, when that's all that the West has done. But Carl, you and I talked, and we were last, and we were talking about the thing that the U.S. made the Dutch do about seizing the company, and you said they'll find out sooner or later that China has the upper hand. And then we see today or yesterday, it says Dutch government relinquishes control of Chinese owned chip maker Nexperia. So what do you have to say about that? Because the Chinese brought them to heel.
Well, first of all, Dutch, they decided to be they volunteered to be America's cat's paw, to grab the chestnut from the fire, the chestnut being Nexperia. And the Nexperia is 100% owned company by its Chinese parent, Wintech, and Dutch, by taking that company in a hostile takeover and forcibly remove its Chinese CEO. This was basically a very hostile act, and they could have done this much more diplomatically if they had just notify Chinese beforehand, say, hey, we're being pressured by United States. They told us they will put Nesperia on entity list if we do something about the ownership. Is there something we can do to work out a deal with you that will satisfy both of us? Well, instead of doing that, no, they just went ahead and nationalized the company. And then guess what? And then a few days later, Trump met with Xi Jinping in South Korea, and then Trump just walked back the whole BIS 50% rule that would have put Nesperia on an entity list. So the whole reason for seizing Nesperia just evaporated. And the Dutch government is now looking the fool. And at the same time, what they control, what they took over, it was the Nesperia Netherlands headquarters. But the Nesperia's manufacturing plant is still in China, under Nesperia China. So the Chinese government told Nesperia China, okay, you don't need to worry about the Dutch headquarters anymore. That was an illegal move, seizure. Now you just only answer to your parent company, Wintech, and your top priority is to make sure you supply semiconductor to Chinese car makers in China. So as for the other car makers, the German, Dutch, German, Japanese, American, if they want semiconductors, they will have to come to you, sign a deal with you, and pay you in RMB. And so that was create a huge supply chain panic because GM and a lot of American automakers say, well, we're weeks from running out of semiconductors because now all the car industry are running on this kind of lean, very lean, just-in-time strategy, so they don't have much inventory. So, and Japan had to shut down Honda, I think, had to shut down a plant in Mexico because they did run out. Everybody was panicking, and this was all created by the reckless action of the Dutch government, and they seized the company. It turns out that they realized the company that sees the headquarters actually doesn't provide much value anymore once it's been cut off from its Chinese supply chain, because actual manufacturing is done in China, and so China basically said, you know what, you can have Nesperia, we don't need it anymore. we'll work around you, it's no problem. And this is why Dutch government now is coming back. So okay, well, sorry, okay. Please have it back. We're just kidding, which is completely. I mean, this is set very bad precedent because what's the signal to the potential Chinese investor in Europe is that these EU countries cannot be trusted. They cannot be trusted because, especially the Nesperia case, it used to be part of NXP Semiconductor, which was spun off from Philips, from the Philips. So Philips initially because they spun it off because it was losing a lot of money, and the NXP was losing billions of dollars. They're on their way to bankruptcy when it was bought out by the Chinese company. The Chinese company Wintech then invested a lot of money to keep it afloat, and they invested additional amount to open new research and development centers in Europe. And then they hit the jackpot when the Chinese EV industry took off, and the EV needs a lot of semiconductors. So this is how Nesperia went from near bankruptcy to profitability by supplying the Chinese market, all these Chinese automakers. And now the Dutch government's like, oh, okay, well, now it's profitable company. Oh, thank you. Now we'll have it back. I mean, it doesn't work like that. Any future Chinese company look into Europe, they're going to look at that. It's like, okay, well, obviously we cannot trust Dutch. They'll go elsewhere. There are still Chinese investment in Europe, but it will go to places like Serbia and Hungary. The government that's much more amenable to Chinese investment. And so, yeah, it's a lose situation for Europe.
I believe that the Western world, especially in the United States, and the power brokers here are becoming more and more desperate. As you were talking, I was thinking about how they launched attacks against Huawei and the phone company before Huawei from China. I was thinking about how they tried to break up TikTok, how they went in Panama demanding the Panama Canal back, how they threatened to attack Mexico when Mexico thought about trading with yuan and backing its currency with its silver supplies. Then we look down at Venezuela as Venezuela sells some oil in the yuan. Then we look at the BRICS and how Trump is attacking BRICS nations separately. He's after India under sanctions, South Africa under sanctions, sanctioning Russia, and now he's talking about some kind of Christian genocide. But he didn't say anything about a Christian genocide in Ukraine, where there's evidence, but he's talking about a Christian genocide in Nigeria, who sells oil in yuan to China. And I noticed, Carl, that the Chinese, they take it in stride and they go behind. They're very calm, but they play the long strategic game, and they're offloading debt. And a lot of on the books it says that China holds X amount of dollars, but in reality, a lot of investors are saying that China has unloaded a lot of that and has exchanged it for gold or tangible commodities or whatever. Is this what the desperation is? That's what's driving Trump and the Western world, because they're playing for time?
Well, I mean, we have talked about this many times before, Rashid, because China is a non-Western, non-white nation on the rise. I mean, even Europe, one of the reasons they are slavishly following the lead of the United States, because they think, okay, we white world got to stick together, to fight off the jungle that's enclosing upon us. And but they are fighting a kind of a rear guard action, because they're lashing out to stop the progress. Well, but I think like you point out, the whole bogus reason for intervention in Nigeria and Venezuela, nobody believes that. Nobody's believing there's actual Christian genocide. Nobody is believing there's drug trafficking operating out of Venezuela, because that's all bogus. This is to curtail the Chinese and Russian influence, and this is still about preserving American primacy, because the U.S. realized at this point it's maybe premature to take China and Russia head on, because they're already losing the war in Ukraine, and they don't see much chance of success to do a direct confrontation of China. So they will try to pick out countries that's much smaller in size, like Venezuela and Nigeria, where they think they will have a more degrees of success. But this is but people are getting tired of this, man. Even United States, let's not forget, Trump got elected by campaigning on a platform of non-intervention. So was Obama. So you American public actually want to stay out of the perpetual war. But of course, that's not happening, because that the people who are really running the show is the military-industrial complex. The military-industrial complex is this vampire that needs to be constantly fed. That's why U.S. need to pivot from one war to next, from Afghanistan to Iraq to Libya, and now they want to pivot to Venezuela and Nigeria. And the goal remained the same. The goal remained to continue funnel lots of money to the people running the military-industrial complex and their lobbyists. But what China is done is they just keep on building their capability, they keep on sharing their capability, and this China's non-intervention policy is actually a great asset, because these other countries are willing to work with China because they know China is not going to come into their country and stage color revolution and trying to influence their internal politics. And so this is why U.S. ultimately is on a losing battle. They as much as they try to preserve the garden, but let me tell you, the jungle will take over. I live in the middle of the jungle. Here I live in Bali, the tropics. Man, all it takes is a big rain, and the jungle comes back.
Carlos Sori 2087 says, "Do you?" And this is second comment on it. He says, "Do you believe that the U.S. is behind Japan's latest circus?"
It could be, or it could be from. This is something from the Japan, because both Europe and Japan, they are panicking that they're somehow going to lose the U.S. Security umbrella. This is why they both slavishly follow U.S. lead, even though their economy is getting slapped with sanctions left and right by Trump. And even though many of them privately and publicly despise Trump, yet they still call him daddy. This is because they're really scared of losing the U.S. protection. And what happened with the recent Xi and Trump meeting, there seems to be a tactical retreat of United States. I said tactical because U.S. hasn't given up its goal of primacy or containing Russia and China. They just thought they'll fight a little smarter by trying to push Chinese and Russian influence out of Latin America and Africa. But for the right-wing politician of Japan, that looks pretty dire because they see now their big daddy is leaving them to face the rising China alone. So now it's time for them to create a crisis to pull America back. Much like Netanyahu wants to pull U.S. into a direct war with Iran, Japan wants to create a crisis so U.S. will be forced to make a public statement about, we stand with Japan, with our democratic allies, so on and so forth. And remember, sometimes it's really hard to tell whether, because we speak of U.S. and their vassals, but sometimes those vassals have their own little game to play. They have their own agency. And for the U.S. right-wing politicians, one of their biggest goals for the longest time is trying to scrap the Article 9 of their peace constitution, which says Japan should not have a military force, but only a self-defense force that's dedicated just for the defense of Japanese homeland. Now, the Japanese prime minister since then has been trying to reinterpret the Article 9, just make it defunct. That started with Shinzo Abe. Shinzo Abe said, well, there could be contingencies that will in the waters around Japan that we might have to support our allies that might cause us to deploy our military, right? But at even that time, he still haven't given up on the strategic ambiguity. Everybody knew he was talking about Taiwan, but he did specifically name Taiwan. So this time, the Japanese prime minister, by naming Taiwan explicitly, she is crossing China's red line. This is China's reddest red line because China always maintained Taiwan is part of China. The Taiwan issue is to be resolved by Chinese people themselves on the both sides of the Taiwan Strait. It's none of your other people's business. And if you're going to step all over in our sovereignty, if you're going to send our military in Chinese territory, that will be the cause for war. And especially given Japan's past history. Let's not forget Japan's reason before leading up to World War II, over and over again, just Japan's initial reason for invading China was Japan needs to protect its security, needs to expand its security sphere to include China, This is because Japan is fighting an existential war. They use the same excuse. This is the same excuse that the Japanese Prime Minister is saying this kind of time. Say if there's a warship involved around the water of Taiwan, that's an existential issue for Japan that we have to get our military committed. Again, this is just to get around of Japan's peace constitution, which, by the way, is very popular among average Japanese citizens, because a lot of Japanese citizens rightly saw the pivoting away from militarism of World War II is what enabled the post-war Japanese miracle to take place. So they have a strong attachment to the Article 9. All these right-wing Japanese politicians, they have tried to doing all kind of a wiggle, trying to either reinterpret it or to make it completely ineffective. And this time that the Japanese Prime Minister can't even claim there's no plausible deniability anymore. The U.S. itself has been very careful of walking the fine line of strategic ambiguity. It never confirm or deny whether U.S. will come to fight a war to prevent Chinese reunification. Even the time when Biden was asked on TV, said, would U.S. defend Taiwan? Biden said yes. That still has wiggle room for White House to walk back from Biden's statement, because everybody knew Biden half the time doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just a walking zombie. There's still plausible deniability. Just the fact that Biden is completely out of his mind. But this time is a non-senile Japanese prime minister, making a very clear statement on the issue of Taiwan. So it is a big deal. And this is why China is very upset, because again, they see that they're before what U.S. is trying to do is trying to get as close to the red line as possible, and then veer away at the last minute, right? But this time, Japan clearly overstepped it, and this is why there's going to be right now. First of all, the Japanese tourist industry is going to take a big hit, because Chinese tourists are the second largest source of the tourist income for Japan tourism industry after South Korea. And so that a lot of Chinese people are canceling their tickets right now to Japan because of this, and their economy is going to take a hit, and then Japan will have to see some consequences. That's the only way, because the reason a lot of these U.S. puppets were willing to openly challenge China, to provoke China, is because for the longest time they thought there would be no consequences. They thought it was consequence-free for them to pose as this tough on China politician to their domestic audience. But I think they will find out that perception is wrong. There will be a lot of pushback from China, and they will have to suffer the consequences.
Right. I notice how when things get hot for the empire, it becomes drugs or whatever. Remember Mexico, when Mexico started getting close to the BRICS, the United States started saying that they may invade Mexico because of the drug cartels. We see them doing it with Venezuela. And remember, before the trade war, the first trade war with China, the United States said the reason that they were sanctioning China is because of fentanyl coming into the United States. So we see all of these excuses. But to me, that shows an era of desperation and lack of in-depth thinking, because this is your number one trading partner. This is your number one investor. This is your number one lender. And even though they may be your competition, you are shooting yourself in the foot, because any war with China would mean China would embargo all goods coming to the United States, which would mean a total collapse of an already collapsing and an imploding economy. And within a week or two, no food on the shelves, no jobs. Think about all the bankruptcies that would happen within the matter of a few weeks to months, because freight would shut down, shipping would shut down, the ports would shut down, banks would go belly up because business would shutter and they wouldn't be able to pay back the loans. So the banks would be in trouble, and this would cause a domino effect throughout the empire. So why do you think that there's not a lot of strategic thinking from those people who are supposed to be the stewards of the so-called American Republic or the American Empire?
Well, I think hubris is a lot of hubris, and this is why you have Scott Besson going on to say, oh, China is a creditor nation. We owe a lot of money to China, but that's China's problem, right? Because his argument is, okay, if you owe bank a small amount of money, that's your problem. But if you owe bank billions of dollars, then it becomes a bank's problem. So that's why he's arguing. China being a debtor nation is actually their weakness. This is why they have to answer to us. China looking at those jokers like, you know what? Okay, no rare earth for you, and they have to back down. And that's another thing. They keep on talking about China debt trap global South countries. But what they don't tell you is China has lent $200 billion to U.S. tech and infrastructure project. So you don't see them crying about China debt trapping United States because they're perfectly fine taking that Chinese money. So this is hubris. But Scott Besson find out the hard way. You know, he the first time was in the 1990s, 1998, when he tried to do a raid on Hong Kong by betting against the Hong Kong dollar, and then but he forgot Hong Kong just had a change of landlord very recently in 1997, and the Chinese government came in and told the Hong Kong government, you got to defend the Hong Kong dollar, you got to defend the Hong Kong stock market, and Scott Besson, then as appointment of George Soros' Quantum Fund, lost a lot of money on that bet. So he always had a personal grudge against China, and this time he didn't pan out very well. You know, he's he can bitch and whine all he could, but you're still not getting that rare earth, man. Still not getting that rare earth. Mm-hmm. And this is why. There's a lot of people are upset. They say, "Oh, but China's rare earth export control is totally inappropriate response because when we try to put sanction on China, it wasn't designed to cripple the entire Chinese economy, but the rare earth export restriction will cripple all manufacturing." Well, this is like you're saying, oh, this is so unfair. I only stabbed him in the arm, but he's going straight for my heart. Come on. You started this. You started this. If you don't intend to finish a fight, maybe you shouldn't pick a fight.
You know, I want to play a clip for you. I played the clip one time before on the show, a few times before on the show. This is about China's gold buying spree, and the reason I want to play this clip is because it has everything to do with the irrational policies of what's going on with the United States and the West, and also what Naomi Prims reported on the 15th of November. And I'll read a section of what she said after the video plays. So Carl, just stand by for a second and just listen to what this guy has to say. And remember that this was recorded maybe 8 to 10 years ago or something like this. So I could be wrong with the timeline, but it's been a while. So just imagine how much more gold China has in its possession. So here we go right here.
Gold is some useless, inert asset, right, whose heyday was in the 19th century, as irrelevant to modern finance as the horse is to transport. Maybe not. Today we return to a favourite theme of ours, and once I haven't looked at since probably 2019, and that is how much gold does China have? And for those with short attention spans who don't want to watch to the end of this video, I'll cut straight to the chase. China has much more gold than it says it does. In fact, it has more gold than the US. Its enormous gold hoards are all part of its grand global reserve currency status designs. Right, now time to back up those assertions. Let's do an audit. Audits involve a lot of numbers, and too many numbers can get a little overwhelming, so I'm going to try and keep these numbers to a mentally digestible minimum. But let me start with perhaps the most important contextual figure and anchor that in your minds, and that is US gold holdings. Official records show that the United States owns some 8,133 tonnes, most of it in Fort Knox. Although I should say that gold in Fort Knox hasn't been audited for 50 years. The US is the world's largest gold owner, or so you would have thought, and gold comprises 77% of United States foreign exchange reserves. China's officially declared holdings are 1,948 tonnes, so about a bit less than a quarter of the US, and that makes up just 3% of its $3.2 trillion of foreign exchange holdings. The real number is, of course, much higher than that. China has been the world's largest gold producer since 2007. This past decade, it has produced about 15% of all the gold mined in the world. Last year, it produced 380 tonnes, which is about 20% more than the world's second largest producer, Australia. And since 2000, China has mined roughly 6,500 tonnes of gold, and more than half of Chinese gold production is state-owned. China National Gold Corporation alone accounts for 20%. So already, just on Chinese gold production alone, that official 1,948 tonne figure looks doubtful. Crucially, China keeps all of the gold it mines. Exporting domestic gold production is not allowed. And with reserves in decline at home, Chinese mining companies have also been buying assets abroad, across Africa, South America and Asia. And international production exceeded domestic production by about 15 tonnes last year. But as well as being the world's biggest producer, China is also the world's biggest importer of gold. It's hard to get precise import figures, but we do know that, for example, via Hong Kong alone, over 6,000 tonnes has entered the country since 2000. So if you add that to cumulative gold production since 2000, you get a figure of 13,200 tonnes. Whether imported, mined or recycled, most of the gold that enters China goes through the Shanghai Gold Exchange, the SGE, including the gold imported from Hong Kong. So SGE withdrawals, for which we do have numbers, can act as something of an approximation for demand, and it is possible to get numbers for SGE withdrawals. Since 2008, roughly 20,000 tonnes have been withdrawn from the SGE. Then we have to add in all the gold held in China, whether as bullion or jewellery, prior to 2000, and the World Gold Council estimates a figure of 2,500 tonnes in privately held jewellery. If you add domestic mining and official reserves, you arrive at a figure of about 4,000 tonnes. Now, Nick Laird of Gold Charts Are Us, one of the world's leading gold data experts, has cobbled it all together to produce this chart, which shows cumulative gold held in China to be around 28,911 tonnes. I've spoken to numerous analysts, Ross Norman, Bron Suchetsky, formerly of the Perth Mint, Koos Janssen, and they all arrive at similar estimates. In addition, there is gold entering China that is not accounted for by SGE withdrawals. Ross Norman points out that the People's Bank of China, the PBOC, likes to buy 12.5 kilo gold bars. They don't trade on the SGE. Also, the PBOC often uses dollars on exchanges in London, Dubai and Switzerland, while the SGE sells its gold in yuan. The army too owns gold and doesn't have to declare its purchases. Remember, there are many state agencies on top of the army and the central bank which buy gold. There's the State Administration of Foreign Exchange and China Investment Corporation, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, to give you two examples. So how much of all that huge hoard is state-owned? 40%? 50%? 60%? But at 50%, the implication is that China owns roughly 14,500 tonnes. That is 1.8 times more than the US. Now, it may be that only 20 or 30% of that gold is state-owned. I find that unlikely, but even if that's the case, it still owns more than the US. And China has been famously encouraging its citizens to buy gold since 2008. And the SGE has actually stated that only consumers buy gold over exchange. But it almost doesn't matter. This encouragement to buy gold, as one of my readers resident in China reported to me, kicked off a frenzy of laundry as China's citizens rushed to exchange the hordes of huqi cash they'd built up. In his local bank in Shanghai, he said, in 2009, he was standing behind a Chinese bloke who was unlocking bundles of euros, US dollars, Singapore dollars, Swiss francs in exchange for 5-kilo gold bars across the counter. Gold ownership in China is registered, so the government knows how much its citizens have. But it's commonly thought that should Beijing invite private holders of gold to support a major government currency initiative by pledging their gold as a kind of war bond, then there would be a 99% pickup. The vast majority of Chinese trust their government, especially when it comes to returning China to the top of the world. And that means a considerable amount of extra gold can very quickly be mobilized to participate in whatever Beijing is planning. Chinese gold holders don't have the same mistrust of government held by Western gold bugs. The party's seen as a good housewife to the nation. But the disruption it would cause means there's no way China can declare such large official holdings, not yet anyway. There'd be an unwanted surge in both the yuan and the gold price. The government's $3.2 trillion of US dollar foreign exchange reserves would be devalued. And to declare that much gold would be a direct challenge to American supremacy, which China is, I don't think, yet ready for. Parity first, then supremacy. So for now, they follow Deng Xiaoping's doctrine of we must not shine too brightly until everything is ready. President Trump wrong-footed the Chinese, and that and COVID, the great accelerator, may have brought schedules forward. The Chinese President Xi Jinping is known as a man of destiny, and he may want the great ascension to happen on his watch. But backing its money, if only in part with gold, as empires on the rise are wont to do, would give China great credibility in a world awash with money print.
So, Carl, I know that was a little long, but, and I said 10 years, I meant to say 4 to 5 years ago, with China still buying gold like this, I think this is a hedge against reneging on the dollar, or what you mentioned when they said that, oh, China is in a position now, they have all our debt, so it's on them and all of this. And this is what is being reported by King World News. It says Naomi Prinz, China is buying a lot more gold than they are reporting. Today, Naomi Prinz, who has given speeches to the World Bank, the IMF, and the Federal Reserve, told King World News today that is a historic day for these stocks. And she says, central banks continue to buy gold, 220 tons. They have bought 28% more this quarter than the last quarter, and that is at an average price well above $4,000. And that's what we know about. That's not even counting the fact that, for example, People's Bank of China has talked about gold purchases. They do report some are basically buying a lot more than they are talking about. So now, wouldn't that be a very smart strategic move by China to hold these gold reserves to hedge itself against dollar implosion or euro implosion? And I think remember, and before you answer that, I also remember, because one of the people in the comments said something about tungsten. I remember they scrubbed the internet of this, that one time the British and the United States tried to blame China for because the banks were settling, you know how banks settled their debts, gold, and it was a shipment of tungsten, and what happened was that the Brits got caught red-handed, and they put a rumor out that this was the Chinese, and so people started drilling an inch into their gold, and they found out that the U.S. and Britain were settling some of the debt with gold-cladded tungsten, and it had serial numbers on it that traced back to the Bank of England and the U.S. Fed, the U.S. Reserves or whatever. So, is it that bad in the Western world with gold assets? And is China thinking about, hey, listen, we have to hedge our bets against the dollars that we have, and we have to make sure that we can insulate ourselves from a global economic implosion by accruing copper, gold, silver, and all of these strategic assets that they're now are doing?
Well, there's actually an article from Financial Times a week ago. It says China is the world's largest producer and consumer of gold, but also among the least transparent. China's reported gold purchases could be more than 10 times its official figures. Now, to that I answer, why would China bother to tell you how much gold it has? China doesn't owe you anything. Why would China have to tell you how much gold it has? You know, what is your intention to know how much gold China has? China has the world's largest gold reserves. I mean, both above ground and underground. And China continue to dig gold out of the ground. But again, China is under no obligation to report the exact figures to, the Wall Street. Why? Why? Why do you need to know? Why do you need to know how much gold China has? It's none of your business. And at the end of the day, gold is the store of value in a crisis. This has been proven time and over again. And China is always prepared. China never put all its eggs in one basket. China prepare for all kinds of eventualities. So gold holding is just one of those things that China has up its sleeve, because as the world's largest producer of gold and largest consumer, and as for China, what's China gonna do with it? That's not for you to find out, Financial Times.
They have a lot of strategic reserves, because they have copper, a copper strategic reserve. They have silver. They have gold. They have your plutonium, platinum, palladium, all of that stuff. China has huge reserves of this, and they have been one of the only nations to make all of those into reserves and stuff. And most people, as Peter Schiff said, and as Mr. Boom and Gloom, I forget his name, but he says that they have done estimates that China, and this was 5 years ago, had over 35,000 tons of gold in its reserve. That would be a hell of a shocker if when the dollar collapsed, or if the West tries to renege on the debt payment, or if they try to destroy China's economy, because gold and silver and all of these precious metals are a hedge against any of that.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. All the Financial Times journalist has to know is China has enough gold, enough for its own use. That's all you need to know. And so I mean, but more than gold, I think China is also investing in, because gold is one of the last resort, right? But more than gold, China is also investing capabilities, particularly in manufacturing capability, because that's ultimately how wealth is generated. Gold acts as a store of wealth, but new wealth has been generated every day as China continues to innovate and push the technological frontiers. We just saw Chinese AI companies have been releasing blockbuster after blockbusters with new open source models, which means free to use models that everybody could leverage. And this is why this is pose a big threat against United States, because U.S. today is run by financial capital and big tech capital. and these two are intertwined, and now they're working together in cahoots to blowing up this AI bubble. And what China is doing is like, hey, we're handing out this stuff for free. Why do you need like $1 trillion to build data centers? And so that's gonna. This is why recently the Wall Street had like $1 trillion wiped off. I say this not much value has been lost because a lot of this is just vaporware. All these money are just going sloshing around, easy money because the money printing are going to all these financial grifts, scams. Like this AI bubble is one of the biggest scam, and this is why a lot of these big tech people are very hostile toward China. You have the co-founder of Palantir, Alex Karp, constantly saying, we have to win this race versus China. Can you imagine if China wins? So I pose a question. So who do you want to win? Do you want Palantir to win, or do you want China to win? That's a real question. There's a real question you're asking people right now. And you know what? I'd rather not have Palantir to win this. And I think this is it's gonna be bad once that AI bubble finally bursts. It's gonna cause all sort of financial turmoil, and it's at times like that when you have a huge stash of gold in your reserve, you can sleep easy at night.
Well, Carl, thank you again, my brother, my friend, for joining me on the platform. I'm gonna message you later. I need to ask you something off the air. I want everybody to hit the like button. Carl, in closing, do you have anything to say to anyone?
Well, we are still going to be here, laughing through the imperial decline on a regular basis. So thanks to everybody for tuning in, and make sure you subscribe to Rashid's Red Pill Diaries. I will be on regularly because this is always a good time to catch up with Rashid.
This is my guy here. Hey man, be blessed. Send your family my love, and I'll talk to you later, Carl. I'll send you that message too.
For sure.
All right, everybody, listen. Thank you. You guys. Morning, I think it's about 9 o'clock. We'll have former Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, on, and immediately following that, 30 minutes later, after that show goes off, immediately we'll have the Robin Hood of Wall Street, my guy Gregory Manarino, the investor of investors, on the platform. So you guys, we're going to have some powerful things we got coming up. We have former Serbian captain of the Serbian Armed Forces, Mike Mihalovic, coming up. We have journalist, author, and writer and geopolitical analyst Tariq Amar coming up soon. In the following weeks, we have a few more other surprises for you guys. We're going to be broadcasting from around the globe. I just want you guys to hit that like button and subscribe to all of the platforms that we have. And I want to also go, before we go, I want to say this again. Shout out to Paul Spencer 4702 for becoming a new channel member. I really appreciate your support. Now, in closing, as I always say, do right by others, not because there's some material gain or some accolades or some pats on the back or some acknowledgement. Do right by others because it's the right, the humane, and the godly thing to do. Because even when no one else is watching you, always remember God Almighty is watching you. As my late, great, and awesome mother would always say, God sits high on the throne, but he looks low. Know that I love each and every one of you who loves truth, freedom, justice, and equality. But know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that the true and living God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, remember to stay righteous. That's the only thing that's going to get you out of here. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Thank you, everybody. I hope it is time well spent. We're out of here. Peace.
Told you to walk away. That was my first